Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 77. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Tuesday, Steelers Nation. And win or loss, we're going to have a podcast recap episode for you guys today. Unfortunately, Dave, the Pittsburgh Steelers have lost yet again. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Pittsburgh one and done, their seventh straight playoff loss, falling to the Houston Texans in lopsided fashion, 30-6, Monday night at Acrisure Stadium, a game that was 7-6 at the end of the third quarter, got away from Pittsburgh in a hurry, and so does their offseason. It happens in a hurry, and Dave, you always send me the charting, and I can always tell win or loss by the smiley face or frowny face I receive accompanying the charting. It was a frowny face, and so that is the Pope white smoke of the Steelers' loss. Their season ends to Houston at home. Dave, I know how you're doing, but how are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, I got a little bit of sleep, couple hours there, and I don't even know that this show is, or that performance is worthy of a gloom, despair, and agony bars along those lines. Gloom, despair, and agony on me. Oh, deep, dark depression, excessive misery. Oh, if I had no bad luck, I'd had no luck at all. Oh, gloom, despair, and agony on me. How's that for first thing in the morning?
Yeah, not too bad. It's better than the performance on the field last night that was miserable in so many ways. And so we'll have a shorter show today, really focusing mainly on this game. Obviously, a couple other adjacent things about injuries and futures and Arthur Smith interview upcoming with Tennessee. But the game itself, 30-6, an abysmal offensive showing, historically bad, and defensively some plays made, but not able to capitalize on them on a run defense that underwhelmed and disappointed. So Pittsburgh, again, bounced in the first round, not been able to get over that hump of winning a playoff game, much less making a meaningful playoff run. And so Pittsburgh has the same future they've had the past decade, Dave.
Yeah, look, you got to the same spot with just different chairs on the Titanic, right? That's the way it feels like right here. They ran into a buzzsaw of a defense last night in the Texans, and on top of, I mean, you can dissect this from several angles. The defense obviously didn't hold up. I think the hope at all that any of us had was, in the third quarter. There actually started the fourth quarter. It was what, 7-6 still at the time. And you're thinking, my God, they're hanging around. As bad as the offense has played, as bad as the defense, the yardage that they've given up, the disparity on third down between the two teams. The Steelers, up until that point, or had at least taken the football away 3 times, and the bottom just fell out in the fourth quarter. And I think my overarching thoughts, immediately after the game were, this was a mid team all season long that was well below mid in this playoff game against the Texans, but yet a merely mid performance might have been enough to maybe win this game, if that makes any sense. Obviously, you give up 2 touchdowns, or the Texans scored 2 defensive touchdowns. Was huge late in the game, and then obviously that late kind of walk in running touchdown that the Texans had. But yeah, this was, I think we saw what happens when you just have a mid-team run up against a team with a very good defense in the playoffs, and yeah, you have what happened there. So I mean, they got back to the same place that they've been the last couple of seasons, right? 10-7 and bowing out of the playoffs and getting smoked at that. Now that makes what, 5 consecutive times that the Steelers have had double-digit losses. Yeah, I couldn't help but think of that meme with all the dragons with two of them breathing fire, looking angry, and then the one with the googly eyes that looks like he doesn't belong there. And then you look at the wild card playoff games leading into Monday night. All of them look like those two dragons on each side, competitive, full of fire and all. And then you get to the Steelers, like, which one of these don't belong? And the Steelers obviously look like the team out of all the teams in the wild card round that did not belong, and obviously that was reflected on the scoreboard. And then you get the look of Aaron Rodgers walking off the field, which potentially the last time for his NFL career, and nobody had any answers, obviously, during any of the press conferences. TJ Watt certainly didn't have any answers. Aaron Rodgers didn't have any answers to a couple of questions, and Mike Tomlin, typical Mike Tomlin post-game loss press conference. So I don't know where you want to start on this, but yeah, my 30,000-foot view was you can't play third down. You can't have third down discrepancy like you had. And you certainly can't turn the football over at any point in the game against a team that has good defense like the Texans.
And we'll see if Aaron Rodgers' final throw of his Steelers tenure and his NFL career is a pick six, the first pick six of his postseason career. Yeah, my takeaways are the same as yours. I really look at third down as the defining factor of this game. Pittsburgh consistently in third and long, Houston consistently in third and manageable, and the overall results reflect that. Houston a sparkling 10 of 15 on third down. Pittsburgh 2 of 14, their worst third down showing in franchise postseason history. They were in, I'll have to pull the averages, but probably they averaged third and 9 plus in terms of yards needed on those 14 third downs. In the first half, those led to punts. In the second half, those led to sacks and turnovers. And you can't live that way for very long against that rush and against that defense before not just having some negative outcomes, but disastrous outcomes. And obviously, the strip sack fumble, the return for a touchdown came on 3rd and 12 that really salted this game away. If we talk about how close this game was going into the fourth quarter, it really was that final play of the third quarter that started to really swing the tide in Houston's favor, converting a 3rd and 15 for 46 yards. Christian Kirk, right sideline, to put Houston in field goal range and put them up 10-6. And that's where Houston took control. And so, of all people, it wasn't Nico Collins, it wasn't the rookies, Higgins or Knoll. It was Christian Kirk, who was supposed to be a Steeler in 2024, would have been traded from Jacksonville to Pittsburgh in all likelihood before breaking his collarbone right before the deadline that scuttled those trade talks. He goes to Houston instead and has a career night against Pittsburgh to send them packing. So only the Steelers can pull something off like that.
Yeah, what was the stat that you had in stats of the weird about how many yards Christian Kirk had going into the game?
Something like 239 for the season. His 144 is a season high, but also a career high, the most he's had since his college days at Texas A&M. So Pittsburgh took away Nico Collins, who left this game with what I believe was a head injury, 3 catches, 21 yards. One of the lone bright spots Monday night was cornerback Joey Porter Jr. playing some really good defense, but it was Kirk winning on third downs, repeated explosive plays, and that certainly broke Pittsburgh's back.
Absolutely, it did. And you just hated to see the Texans be able to run the football like they were able to do on the Steelers. I mean, what did they have total yards? Over 400 in this one. And, to at least the defensive credit there, they were able to take the football away 3 times in this game. And yet they came away with 3 points on those three takeaways, and yet when the Steelers turned the football over, it was going back in the end zone their other way there. So there's just so much bad both sides of the football here, and like you said, to let someone like Christian Kirk be able to beat you in this game, along with the right look. It wasn't just Christian Kirk, right? It was a run game. It was a combination of a lot of things. The Texans were able to move the football. It was just thankful that the Steelers were able to get some takeaways when they did, or else the score would have been even worse than what it was. And then offense just, and you mentioned it, you played behind the chains. They only blitzed Aaron Rodgers something like 8%, 8.1% of the time, and that was the third lowest blitz rate. And we said going into the game, this is a Texas defense that doesn't blitz a lot. They don't need to blitz a lot. They're like, here are our 4 guys up front. We're not gonna disguise a lot on the back end. Come and get us. And they only blitzed 8.1%, in next gen stats, I think, had a pressure rate of, what was it, 40, hold on a minute here.
45, 48%, I believe, was the stat I saw from you.
Yeah, 45.9% pressure rate. Sacked 4 times, 17 quarterback pressures on 37 total dropbacks.
And 12 quarterback hits, according to ESPN.
Okay, and 12 quarterback hits. And Aaron Rodgers really had no choice as the game went on to try to hold the football a little bit longer. That, and he didn't have anybody open, getting separation to throw to. His 2.98 snap to throw time, according to next gen stats, was his 3rd longest of the season. The Buffalo game was 3.09, and the win against the Bengals in Week 11 was 3.49. So obviously completed just 17 of 33 passes in the game. His average completed air yard distance was under 5. His average net yards per attempt, number that I always like to go to, was under 2. Yeah, that's
what was it exactly? You had a 1.79, I think, was the official number.
Let me see if I can pull that back up here real quick in my timeline. 1 point, and look, that was the 4th lowest, I believe, of Aaron Rodgers' career, including playoff games and any game in which he attempted more than 20 pass attempts. Let's see, he had an average completed air yard distance of 4.29 yards. His adjusted net yards per passing attempt number was 1.76 in this one. So, and once again, I think that was his 4th lowest adjusted net yards per passing attempt number, including regular season and playoffs, of his career when attempting 20 or more passes. So he's had worse games than that, but obviously not many overall. I thought what was the number that what's his name had that really told the story last night as far as stats? Who's the guy on I'll find it here in a minute.
Yeah, you got to give me some context. By the way, Rodgers, that 1.76 number, the lowest of any quarterback in the postseason, with at least 20 attempts since Jordan Love of last year. So the man who replaced him in Green Bay, Jordan Love, had a 1.71 against the Eagles last year. Justin Herbert last year had a 1.42 against that Texans defense. So Houston defense showing its elite ways.
Yeah, they were they were all over him. And when you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers that's not mobile, and it just compounded the problems, especially when the down the distance situations were what they were. They really couldn't get any. Aaron Rodgers was 2 of 10 on passes of more than 15 air yards down the field. Those 2 completions, good for 39 yards in total. And I'm still looking for that one other tweet. Okay, here it is from Nate Tice. who obviously does good statistical work and all around, for other outlets. There have been 283 instances where an NFL quarterback had 20 plus pass attempts in a playoff game since 2013, according to True Media Sports. Aaron Rodgers' game tonight against the Texans ranks 283rd, which is last, 283rd out of 283 in drop back success rate, 21.2%, and EPA, expected points added per drop back, of negative 0.76. I quote tweeted it with, I'm not sure what else needs to be said here. You throw all those stats together that we and look, once again, this was a great Texas defense that they went against, but it's not an excuse. It's just you got to be able to when you get into the postseason. A lot of times you're going to run up against the league's best defense at some point if you're going to make a run. They did it right out of the chute, and they had zero answers for it, especially in the passing game.
If you want to be the best, you got to beat the best, is the old saying, and Pittsburgh certainly neither of those things after this game. Obviously, there was a DK Metcalf drop in here that was a crucial play, missed opportunity that kind of sums up this game about missed chances, and you wonder what could have been had that play been made. It would have been a big gain. I think Pittsburgh was up 3-0 at the time. Do they win this game against this defense? It's still hard to say that was going to win you the game, but you wonder what if. Let's back up here quickly, Dave, before diving back into the game. Just some housekeeping side of things. Injury standpoint, Pittsburgh seemingly okay. Obviously wasn't talked about post-game because there are no more games to play, so the injuries don't seem to matter a whole lot. Chuck Clark left the game, although he did later return after a big hard hit on Jalen Knoll, breaking up a pass downfield. I think that was the notable injury. I might be missing something, Dave. You can tag in here. Were there any other major in-game injuries?
I know Cam Hayward left for a play or two, came back in. I'm trying to think if anybody else got dinged up there. I don't think Mike Tomlin even addressed that during the post-game press conference. I think it was really Chuck Clark, and I believe that was it, especially when you look at the snap totals and all for the game. Doesn't look like anybody really missed any time during that one.
Pre-game, Pittsburgh elevated a pair of cornerbacks in Deshaun Jameson and Trey Flowers. You wondered about why they needed both corners with the cornerback room healthy, but you had a really good point pre-game that proved to be true, that Flowers might be up just as a precaution because you get unlimited elevations for each individual, and so just have him up in case and then make him inactive if not needed, and that was the case. Jameson dressed and played on special teams, but Flowers was inactive, and the rest of your group was pretty chalk. That included Caleb Johnson and Roman Wilson, who did not dress for this game.
Yeah, it felt like it was pretty chalk. I did have a kind of a question, wondering if they would maybe dress Logan Lee or not. Maybe, I don't know, sit down Scotty Miller or something just to have an extra defensive lineman dress. But I took a dart shot and predicted correctly that Logan Lee would be down. And I didn't even think about the fact going into our conversation. We had a good idea that Jameson would be elevated there. I didn't really even give much thought to why not just go ahead and do the max elevations of two players just in case somebody got hurt during warm-ups or whatnot. So the more I thought about it once the inactive list or once the elevations took part, that's why I tweeted out about Trey Flowers potentially being elevated only to be inactive, and that ended up being the case there. So at least I finished on a high note. I think I predicted the final two inactive lists correctly, so at least I was on top of my game late there. But all in all, it didn't matter who was active or inactive for this thing overall. And once again, Mike Tomlin didn't give an injury rundown after the game. We'll now wait and see during some of these post-season press conferences of who might need surgery and who won't need surgery. But overall, I think except for the guys on IR, and I know Deshaun Elliott was at least perky. It sounds like he was perking up late in the season, so sounds like he might be ready to go by the time OTAs roll around. Some of the other guys that were on, and obviously they opened up the window for Isaiah Loudermilk this past week, and some of the other guys on that had the season ending injuries and on IR, not coming back. Other than say Broderick Jones, a lot of those guys probably aren't even going to be enough to worry about as far as their status goes, because they might not even be on the team next year.
As of this recording, we don't know when Mike Tomlin will hold his final season-ending press conference. We know the team will be in the building today. There'll be a open locker room for the players, but we don't know exactly when Tomlin will speak again besides his post-game press conference last night. That should be coming within a couple of days. It often is, but we don't know exactly when and all the details quite yet. All right, Dave, let's go back into this game. 30-6 loss. It's funny in a sense. The last time Pittsburgh played Houston in 2023, it was a 30-6 loss, and that score gets repeated this time Monday night at Acrisure Stadium. Let's start with the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, which, as we always joke about, was more offensive than offensive in this one. 175 total yards of offense, second fewest in any postseason game in Steelers playoff history, only ahead of their first ever playoff game, which took place way back in 1947. There's 6 points, fourth fewest in a postseason game in franchise history. 2 of 14 on third down, worst performance ever in franchise history in the postseason on third down. So you guys get the point. The run game had some success early. It did feel like Pittsburgh maybe started to get away from that during the third quarter, middle portions of this game. And the story really is the third downs, which you were in third and forever situations. That's untenable against any defense, especially versus this one. You had a bunch of punts early on, couldn't convert. And then again in that second half, third, fourth quarter, you had the real negativity of the sacks and fumbles and defensive touchdowns. We talked about how Houston could score more than just on offense. This year they had 4 non-offensive touchdowns, all on defense. Coming into this game, they finished with 2 more, fumble return for a touchdown, and a pick 6. So when you're in third and long against this group, it's going to be a bad time, and it was a bad time.
Yeah, when you look at third down, 2 of 14, 14%, 0 for 2 in the red zone. And we talked about going into this that the Texans hadn't been overly great defensively. If there was one minor blemish when you looked at the Texans defense, that they haven't, I think we said they were somewhere, in the middle of the league, or no, maybe even
No, they were 30th, I think, in red zone. You said 31st in goal to go, I think it was.
Yeah, something like that. So the fact that you go 0-2 in the red zone on top of being 2 of 14 on third down, and then on the flip side, when you match it up to what they did, 10 of 15 on third down and 2 of 3 in the red zone. I mean, you hate to boil it down to easy stats that way. And then obviously you get 3 takeaways. You only get 3 points off of those, and your 2 takeaways go back in the end zone. 3.1 average yards per play. They only ran 56 offensive plays in total. As you mentioned, total net yards of 175. Sacked 4 times for 36 yards. Completion percentage of just slightly over 50%. We talked about the Aaron Rodgers, 2 of 10 on passes longer than 15 yards. The drop pass by DK was a huge part of the game, at least as far as momentum went there. They couldn't get anybody open downfield. The pressure that we talked about, nearly 50% pressure rate for a team that did not blitz you hardly anything. The inability, I don't know what the first down, I don't know if we can sort out real quick.
I can pull it up here.
What the average gain per first down in 10 situation was for this team. I'll try to filter what I have here as well too. But you get off on situations on first. Let me see if I can sort it out here. 1st and 10. Let me take out the penalty plays on there. Looks like hold on here. Go ahead and fill in a little bit of time.
Oh,
here.
I have it pulled up unless you want to.
I have
Read off the numbers.
104 total yards on 1st and 10 situations, excluding penalties, on 21 total plays. So if you divide that by 21, you get, 4.95 average in there. But you had your first two 1st and 10. Look, they came out to shoot on 1st and 10. Fine. 10-yard run by Jalen Warren, and then the 17-yard screen out to DK to the side there. So that's 27. So you're 3 out of your first 4 1st and 10 situations. You had 10, 17, and 25 yards. After that, it was pretty dismal. I mean, you had some negative yardage. You had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plays, 0 yards, either an incompletion or no gain. And you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plays for negative yards there. So what's that? 12 plays, I think, of 0 or negative yardage out of 21 1st and 10 plays, non-penalty related, that either went for 0 or negative yards.
Yeah, just to look at, I'm looking at StatHead, Pro Football Reference. The numbers differ slightly, but for the entire game, Pittsburgh averaged 4.6 yards on first down. That was second worst of any wild card team this weekend, only ahead of the Philadelphia Eagles. After the first quarter, Pittsburgh averaged 2.9 yards on first down. That was easily the worst of any team this weekend, a full yard worse in second place, Philadelphia. So that kind of sums it up. When you're bad on first down, the question is, how do you get yourself into those third and forever situations? Well, obviously, you're not doing enough on first and second down, and that was true. You had some 2nd and 10 runs. I know Pittsburgh was trying to stay out of those third and longs, but those runs, ironically enough, put them into those third and long situations. Pittsburgh's plan was not to really chip those ends a lot. I think Pittsburgh understood they couldn't play that kind of game and have their chippers or the backs and tight ends protect against Hunter and Anderson, because then you're sending only 3 out in the pattern against a defense that does not blitz. So it's 3 out against 7 in coverage, and very good coverage guys in Stingley, Lassiter, Petrie, Bullock, and that was not going to be successful. So you were sending Gainwell and the tight ends out in the pattern, which left you in 5-man protection situations, which eventually caught up to this team. But even still, couldn't get guys open. You couldn't win in those possession downs because you just had too far of a distance to go. Pittsburgh could not really get into a schedule and a rhythm to stay out of those moments, and Houston could really pin their ears back and tee off.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really started to manifest itself later on in the game when they're in must passing situations, down 2 scores. And that's when those guys could really start teeing off at that point. They can ignore the run. Well, how many times did they run in the second half even? How many rush attempts in the second half? 4, 5, something like that. What did they have at halftime? Let's see. Halftime. How many rushes did the Steelers have at that point? 8 in total, and they
finished with 18.
18. Okay. How many? I think what I was looking at earlier was maybe the fourth quarter rushing attempts.
Those all came in garbage time.
Yeah,
when
7
Rudolph
of
had
them.
subbed in. So yeah, obviously fourth quarter you had to throw until the game was out of hand. Again, going back to third down, the real 2 stats are the sudden change, getting 3 points off 3 takeaways, and third down. And I'll tweet this out here in a little bit because I think it's the most revealing stat of the game. This was the average distance both teams needed on third down. So the average yards to go, third and what, in this game. Houston, they averaged third and 5.5 yards. That was third best of any team this wildcard weekend. Pittsburgh, they averaged third and 10.5 yards to go. So a full 5 yards further to go than Houston. That was easily the worst of any wildcard team this weekend. Nearly 3 yards worse than next worst, which was Green Bay at 7.7. So Pittsburgh averaged third and 10.5. And you're just not going to win against any defense again, but especially this defense, this rush, this secondary, when you're literally averaging more yards than 1st and 10, in third down, possession down moments.
Yeah, absolutely. No, especially not against that defense. And Yeah, they couldn't get people open. I think the Texans just did a good job of trying to bracket DK Metcalf at times. And look, I mean, you got 2 receptions to DK right out of shoot for what, 40 something yards, and then I think he had a drop after that, and it seemed forever and a day before he got his next target. After that, he ended up with something like what, 5 targets, I think, for the game in total. Just the 2 catches for the 42 yards, which was his first 2 targets and receptions of the game, and couldn't get the ball to him. Other than that, tried to use Gainwell a little bit, not much there. 4 for 26 there, and just a smattering of other. I mean, you couldn't get the ball down the field to Calvin Austin. They tried a couple of times there with no success. Uh, had to get the obligatory pass attempts, targets to Jonnu Smith. 2 catches, -1 yards. What's the stat of the weird related to that?
First Steelers non-running back to ever have negative receiving yards in a postseason game, joining a smattering of running backs who did it, most recently Najee Harris. So only negative things seem to happen whenever Jonnu Smith gets involved, whether that's, catch on a screen for nothing, a false start that puts Pittsburgh in 1st and 15, unable to find the football in the red zone on a, vertical throw that Aaron Rodgers had towards him. I know Darnell Washington was out, but Jonnu Smith was just negative throughout this entire season. And in a game where Pat Freiermuth receives only 3 targets and none until there's 11 minutes left in the 4th quarter and you're down by multiple scores, even Aaron Rodgers postgame asked about why wasn't Pat Freiermuth involved more in this game throughout the season, despite Rodgers really pleading and talking about getting Freiermuth involved. And Rodgers was really speechless and said, "I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. And Dave, nor do I."
Yeah, his first target didn't come until what, the 4th quarter, right?
Correct, the 4th quarter, and it was incomplete. I think the second one, though, was an 18-yard catch, one of the few successful downfield plays of the night. So good things happen when Freiermuth gets the ball. He just unfortunately hardly gets the ball. Now, I think he played a lot. I believe he played a bunch of snaps in this game. You may have the snap count. You can tell me. So it wasn't for a lack of reps, but it just, there was no scheme for him. I don't know what was or wasn't open, but there was no effort to get him the football.
I haven't even cracked open the all 22 yet. Been trying to wrap up some loose ends from the game last night and all. 39 total snaps on offense for Pat Freiermuth. Jonnu Smith played 30 in this game, and really the reception, which was a great contested catch by Pat Freiermuth down the middle of the field. That was a hurry up situation where they caught him with the too many men, right?
Mhm. It was, yeah. So, but it was still a great throw and great catch by Freiermuth. So the run game, you had some success earlier. I feel like Pittsburgh had some perimeter runs that probably shouldn't have been called. You had one, I think, right off one of the turnovers, maybe the Benton strip sack fumble, and you had a crack toss that DK couldn't make the block, and that got blown up. And you finished with just 18 rushes, 63 yards. Warren and Gainwell averaging both under 4 yards per carry. That both played fine, but just not a lot of reps, and the game started to get away from Pittsburgh, obviously, towards the end.
When you think back, let's say 1 full year from now, and you look at the wide receivers that the Steelers dressed for this game: DK Metcalf, Calvin Austin III, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Adam Thielen, Ben Skoranek, and Scotty Miller. How will this look? In other words, not necessarily a year from now, but 2 years from now, when we obligatory pull up the game box of the players, the wide receivers that dress for the game. How will this be looked back on?
Not fondly, I can tell you that. It's not the right group, obviously. And DK, despite that drop, which was bad, they get him involved early, get him the early touch, the screen, like you said, which was a good play, good blocks out there by Skoranek and others for 17 yards, but just a lot of stretches where he goes quiet and they can't get him the football. They can't scheme it up for him. I'm sure he was seeing plenty of attention and in some tough matchups, and neither of us had looked an inkling at the L-22, but your best receiver gets 5 targets, and I think he went basically, 2+ full quarters without a target, and that just can't be in a game like this.
Yeah, and how many times, I don't have the drops in front of me. Maybe we could look at PFF real quick. How many drops did Metcalf have? What was his drop percentage? Because there was, I mean, how many times have we seen DK drop some balls?
Sure, it's happened more than occasionally, according to PFR, and drops are a bit subjective, and so I'm sure stats can differ outlet to outlet, but they have him for 5 in the regular season, a 5.1 drop percentage, which is right in line exactly with his career average. I noted back in training camp, good as a camp as it was for Metcalf, he dropped a couple passes. His hands are suspect, his hands are not his strength or his calling card. And obviously that drop on that really good route, that corner route where Stingley bit inside, Metcalf went outside. That's a huge, huge missed moment.
Let's see. Looking at PFF real quick, they gave DK 2 drops in that game last night for 6 for the season for a 9% drop rate for the season.
Okay.
Look, I mean, that one play didn't win or lose the game, obviously, but it was a big point in the game where it felt like maybe maybe could get a little momentum in the situation there. And then obviously from that point forward, he didn't get targeted again for quite some time.
And that other drop, I think, was that sliding attempted catch between 2 defenders, which is certainly a tougher play, but one you need your star receiver to make in a must-win playoff game.
Yeah, look, they couldn't get guys separated at all, period. And then that caused Aaron to have to hold the ball a little bit longer, and then could, against that pass rush. And that's just a good damn defense. But you knew that going into this. You knew that you're going to have to run the ball effectively. You couldn't have Aaron Rodgers back there drop. How many times did he drop back in total? 33 out of how many plays do we say? 50, 56, 57, I guess. There were some penalties mixed in there.
Plus his sacks, those are
Plus the
dropbacks,
sacks,
so
right.
getting
Right.
closer to 40.
Yeah, so 37 dropbacks for him in total. Yeah, that's that's a recipe for disaster against that defense.
And not to make this all about one play, but that drop, I believe, of Metcalf came 2nd and 10 at Pittsburgh's 44, end of the first quarter. Pittsburgh's up 3-0. If there was an early silver lining, Pittsburgh was not digging themselves an early hole. They led after the third quarter after being outscored 73-0 in their prior 6 games in the first quarter. Had Metcalf caught that, there would have been a run after opportunity as well, because again, Stingley lost coverage. I don't know exactly where that would have ended up, but well into Houston territory. Instead, you put yourself in 3rd and 10. Pittsburgh throws short. They have to punt, and Houston scores a touchdown. They went on that great 92-yard drive on the ensuing punt there. So you talk about turning points and what ifs. That one looms large.
Look, I gotta admit, even as doom and gloomy as it looked at the time, even after the field goal at 13:07 of the fourth quarter, they're down 10-6 at the time. You're thinking, okay, you've had time to kind of adjust to this defense. Can you get anything? In other words, this is still a winnable game at 13:07 left in the ball game there. And then obviously at that point, the bottom fell out the next possession with the strip fumble return for a touchdown. At that point, you at 17-6 even, you thought, okay, this is over at this point here. But
When did it change? When did your hope evaporate? For me, it was that 3rd and 15 completion to Kirk, where you felt like you got to stop there. You're down 7-6. You get good field position on the punt. You got Boz back there. You're still in this fight, and after that completion, that win started to be taken out of my sails.
Yeah, I mean, I was tapping out the Rankins fumble return at that point.
Okay, yeah, at that point, it was, you knew this thing was not going to bounce back in Pittsburgh's favor. Anything else here offensively? The tackles obviously had some rough nights. Again, they weren't getting the chip help nearly as often because Pittsburgh needed guys out in the pattern. I thought they held up okay early. Fautanu, and it really Dylan Cook especially, I thought did well early. But Rodgers lacking mobility, extending the play. You probably need that in a game like this where your guys aren't getting as open against a really good plaster defense like Houston. And then those guys obviously started to really struggle in the second half when Hunter and Anderson could really turn it on for Tanu. I thought in particular had issues in this game, probably one of his worst, if not the worst showing he's had this year. It's hard to fault him. Still a young guy facing top end, 2 All-Pros in Anderson and Hunter, but those guys have a lot to learn after this last game heading in the offseason.
Let's see, and we've noted in the past when the Steelers are not able to push the football down the field effectively in chunks through the air, how much they've relied on yards after the catch. They had 73 yards after the catch. I don't have our adjusted yards after the catch, so I imagine it's a little bit lower than that. But all told, they averaged 4.1 yards after the catch, and that's definitely not going to cut it when you're not able to pop the explosive plays. They had just 2 explosive plays in the game. One came on the second reception by Metcalf, and the other one I believe was one to Adam Thielen. Was the other explosive play I think in this game for this team. So, and then DK Metcalf, I think, accounted for 29 yards after the catch. A lot of that came on his explosive play. And then Kenneth Gainwell totaled 24 yards after the catch. But I imagine if you look at where he caught the football on a couple of those behind the line of scrimmage, even that's kind of muted to some degree there. So this was an offense, once again, that throughout the season, if they could not pop it down the field through the air, relied heavily on the yards after the catch. And just another aspect of this, along with the third downs, along with the red zone inefficiency, that just another stat that you can point to that's not going to allow them to win this game.
Just so much bad situational football, whether you talk about red zone, like you said, Pittsburgh 0 of 2. They finished their last 3 games 2 of 11 in the red zone after being a top 5 unit really prior to that point this season, 2 of 14 on third down. So bad situational football, obviously. Sudden change, really have to focus on that. Houston, 3 turnovers. If you told me Houston was going to turn the ball over 3 times in this game, I'm telling you, let's go to New England. Let's go celebrate the divisional round matchup against the Patriots. Houston has simply not turned the football over at that rate almost the entire season. Only 1 game this year they had 3 or more giveaways. That was in week 3 against Jacksonville, a game in which they lost. They turned the ball over just, I think, 3 times in their previous 8 games combined prior to Monday night. Stroud was a mess, but Pittsburgh simply could not capitalize. 3 points off those 3 takeaways. You had a punt, a field goal, and a punt off those turnovers by Houston, by Stroud. I know the one had Pittsburgh backed up on their 4 on the Eccles interception, but the others, you had the ball at your own 44 and then the ball at Houston's 21, and you manage only 3 points with a great kicker in Boz and a red zone offense that had been good until the last couple weeks of the season. Again, sudden change, situational moments. How do you respond in those situations? And Pittsburgh failed.
Well, absolutely, and yeah, I'm with you. If you would have just told me one thing, Dave, if I missed a game, you said, and I woke up and you said, Dave, the Steelers had 3 takeaways against Houston, I'd say, all right, well, they won. Good for them. Hopefully, I'll be awake to watch the game in New England against the Patriots, but. Yeah, if they're going to give you the football like that, especially against a good defensive team like that, you got to be able to cash those things into points. So you averaged 1 point per takeaway. That's that's certainly not going to cut it. And I don't know how more Captain Obvious I could be in that.
Houston, the first team to have 3 or more turnovers, lose the turnover battle, and win by 24 or more points since the 96 Steelers, who beat the Colts 42-14, a game the Colts had Jim Harbaugh, whose Chargers were eliminated the day before in very similar fashion in bleak offensive performance. So a lot of weird stats in this one, most not working in Pittsburgh's favor, but yeah, just could not capitalize on those moments, and it's that makes this loss hurt even more because you had your chances, and Pittsburgh just played with their food all night long.
Yep, and even so, once again, 7-6 after the third quarter, right?
Right, still in this thing, and then the fourth quarter happened, and we know how that turned out. Any other offensive thoughts, Dave?
Nah, just ugly. I mean, I thought Dylan Cook had a nice snatch trap on one of the sacks that Aaron Rodgers ended up just tripping over him. The lack of quarterback mobility, has been obvious throughout points of this season, but it was really obvious in this game against the Texans, not having that aspect of it. Just even on the TV tape on some of the replays, you could see that just no separation from your eligibles out there. Not being able to pop any runs other than maybe a few early there was the downfall. I mean, you just add all this stuff together and compound it, and you get what you get. Just very, very sad. I mean, third downs tell the story. Red zone. I mean, there's so many different things that you could just point to. 2 turnovers that go into your own end zone. It just every way that this team could lose offensively, they lost.
Yeah, well said. And Houston, just the more physical unit. Their defense was hitting. They were tackling well. They weren't allowing yards after the catch. Gainwell and Warren, I know, were popped pretty good on individual receptions in this game. I thought Warren was running hard early, and Gainwell had a couple of decent runs. There was a moderate success in the run game, but not enough, and obviously just couldn't lean on that whenever the game started to get away from Pittsburgh late. Should also note on that strip sack fumble, Sayamalu just got run over by the D tackle. He didn't trip. Often in those situations, you see a lineman fall like that. He gets tripped or his legs get tangled up. There's kind of an explanation for it. I don't see that at all on the replay. And he just got steamrolled, and he's a big, strong dude with a powerful anchor. That's kind of his calling card, his strength. And so that is a rare negative moment for Sayamalu, and that didn't disallowed Rodgers to step up in the pocket and avoid some of that edge pressure, which contributed to the sack, the fumble, and the touchdown. So again, Houston just being that bully team, that physical unit that just took it to Pittsburgh.
Yep. I don't know what else to get to as far as the offense goes.
Let's go to the defense then, Dave. And the disappointment here was the run defense. Yet again, another postseason contest and loss. We're talking about Pittsburgh's run defense not being good enough, allowing 164 yards to Houston in total, 5.3 yards per carry, 1 rushing score where Pittsburgh was basically waving the white flag. Late, Woody Marks, 112 yards, 6 yards a carry almost, and a touchdown. The run defense, disappointing, Dave.
Yeah, gave up 1 explosive run to Marks of 20 yards out to, I believe, the right side there. Let's see, Chubb had the next longest run maybe in the game, I believe, of 9 yards. Did Marks have one over 9 yards?
He had a 20-yard run. Are you saying he had an additional run more than 9 yards?
Did he have how many runs of 10 yards or longer did Marks have?
I think he probably had at least one more that was longer than to hit double digits. I can double check here. The touchdown. How long was his touchdown run? It was 13 yards. So there's a second one right there.
All right. It just seemed like there was a lot of 5, 6, and 7s mixed in there, and they did such a good job of, for the most part, staying ahead of chains. And we talked about how you can't allow them to be in more manageable situations. And the thing was too, when you did get them in the third down and long situations, they were converting. They popped 4 explosive plays in the passing game. It seemed like the Texans decided to play a lot of man in this. Seemed like they went after Eccles quite a bit, obviously, in this game, and Eccles got pretty smoked up in this game, and by Christian Kirk of all people in this one. So even though Eccles was the one I think that had the nice interception down there in the low red zone there, outside of that, I thought Eccles played. I thought Joey Porter Jr. for the most part played. I think he was. If there's a star of the game, it might have been him in coverage situations there, but. Or I'm talking about, I'm obviously talking about defensive side of football here, but it seemed like the Texans played a lot of man. It looked like the Steelers played a lot of man in this.
Yeah, they were bringing some pressure, a lot of man blitzes on third down, a couple things off the edge. Patrick Queen rushing quite a bit up the middle. Didn't feel like the pressure was getting home the way that it needed to, even though you had a couple of those fumbles. Stroud was just a more of a mess. I mean, he had credited with 5 fumbles in this game, some bad snaps, some drop snaps, and one where he didn't expect it, then just some other fumbles as well, facing some occasional pressure. TJ Watt just wasn't good enough. He had 0 sacks. His impact was pretty muted in this game. He's got, one sack in his 5 career playoff games. Thought Cam Hayward played a decent game on first blush, but just not getting probably enough there from your rush overall. Then in coverage, it was, Kirk on Eccles beating him throughout most of the game, and that was the story of the pass game.
Let's see. What did the Houston offense on third and, let's say, 6 or more? How did they fare on third and 6 and more situations? Looks like 2 completions. Is that right?
You told me they did the one to Kirk, the 3rd and 15.
Yeah, 3rd and 15, they popped for 46 yards. They had a 3rd and 10 that they only got. So I guess the Steelers defense overall did good job on 3rd and long. They just didn't get them in enough 3rd and long situations there.
Right. Again, Houston averaged 5.5 yards needed on their 15 third downs. And when you're in those manageable situations, the playbook opens up. Pittsburgh can't be as aggressive or as exotic. They got to still respect the run because Houston was having success with the ground game. Always the chance that you run the ball in 3rd and 5, get 4 yards, and go forward on 4th down in this kind of new, more aggressive landscape. So, Houston, again, 1 third down on both sides of the football, and that was key for them.
Yeah, you just not enough those situations to get them to keep them behind the chains. And once again, it felt like in the live play-by-play, it was 5, 6 yards here and there. What was their average on first down?
On first down,
1st and 10
for the entire game.
Yeah,
I would need a second year to kind of double check this, but I think it wasn't great. They weren't prolific on first down. I think it was about maybe 4 or 5 yards average on first down, so it wasn't anything that knocks your socks off, but it was consistent.
All right. I mean, and once again, they had 4 explosive plays of 20 yards or longer, and how many of those were double? Let's see. 1 was a double explosive play to Kirk. 2, 1 other 36, 133, and then obviously the Woody Marks run for 20. So they had 4 explosive plays to the Steelers 2 on offense.
I'm seeing 5.2 yards average on first down for Houston in this game, which was, again, it was not a great number, but it was consistent. They stayed on schedule. They got in the third manageable, and that's why they completed, 2/3 of their third downs.
All right.
What else here, Dave? Kyle Duggar struggling in space. He's really his limitations in coverage, his lack of athleticism, the reason why the Patriots were so willing to dump him despite being a contending team at the deadline, really were exposed as the year went on. These last couple of weeks, the Ravens game, the Browns game, this game, he was on the back end of that Kirk 46-yarder on third and 15 we just mentioned. I don't know exactly if that's more on Eccles or more on Duggar. Again, I'd have to go back and watch it with a more careful eye, but Duggar out there in space is not his game.
Agreed. Man, not that it would have made a whole hell of a lot of difference, I don't think, but been nice, obviously, to have Deshaun Elliott in this one. Man, just a couple of nice hits in the game, some separating some guys from the football. Peyton Wilson had a nice hit along the right sideline to break up one. I think who else had a pass defense in this? Joey Porter had. How many did Joey Porter have in this one?
2.
2.
And one of which was called a catch. It shouldn't have been called a catch very early for 4 yards. That would have been, I think, overturned had Tomlin challenged. I thought Porter played a good game, really topped off a strong third season. That's a guy very much in line for a nice payday this offseason.
And Chuck Clark had that one that he was injured on a nice hit in the middle of the field.
Should give props to the rookies for making some plays. Harmon had a sack. Granted, it was for 0 yards, but a sack is a sack. Jack Sawyer on the flea flicker. Great job there to read it, key it, beat the block, force the fumble. Y.A. Black showing the soft hands. And so it was your rookies making a lot of those splash plays in this game.
All right, we have yet another playoff game for T.J. Watt where no sacks. What does that give him? 1 sack in every playoff game total?
He has 1 sack in his 5 playoff games, correct?
All right. That's obviously not good enough there. Oh, what else? Man, I'm just running out of superlatives just to talk about this defense here. But Eccles, obviously, they did seem to go after him quite a bit.
Yeah, no question. Again, I thought Pittsburgh's run defense would be a whole lot stronger. It could make Houston one-dimensional on a night where Stroud was struggling mightily with protecting the football and making good decisions and even just securing the snap. That would have really played even more in Pittsburgh's favor had they made them one-dimensional. The stat I have, and I think it's their last 3 postseason games for Pittsburgh, they've allowed a combined 642 rushing yards. I mean, it's an absurd number. They've allowed 100 plus rushing yards in all 7 of their playoff losses. That streak, that drought they're currently on for an offseason where you went out and bolstered your front 7 because of what Derrick Henry did to you in last year's wild card game. Because Baltimore ran for 299 on you, you did this in the hopes of improving your run defense. It just never got good enough. There were some good moments this year against the Lions, the Colts. It did get better late in the season, but it never felt like it was super steady and on solid ground, and it certainly waned in a really negative way in the postseason.
Mm-hmm. I
And
agree.
you wonder why, and you wonder what is the fix because you just invested heavily. You said something at inside linebacker. Obviously, getting Deshaun Elliott back will help as your box safety, but what else is there to do? What more can Pittsburgh do to improve this run defense?
Well, I haven't looked at the all 22 to see the gap containment and all like that, but you've got so much money tied up in this defense. Now, look, you've obviously did not have Deshaun Elliott for quite a bit of this, and that factors into it some. But then you did not have Harmon for a stretch of games there on top of it. But when you look at pieces of how this defense could potentially change, assuming that you don't dump Ramsey and you don't dump Queen, and let's assume Cam Hayward comes back and all. We'll see. Herbig, your outside linebackers at least will be intact for one more season. How much is the personnel actually going to change, except for maybe a safety, another corner, and maybe some depth on the defensive line.
So is this just run it back and hope it just is better with better health and the maturation of young guys? Is that the answer? Because the question still is, how do you improve this run defense?
Well, I mean, I don't know. You got to get stronger. You got to get better up front in interior up the spine once again. Here we are back to kind of talking. And look, Cam Hayward, I thought had a fantastic season, but that's not enough. We saw some flashes of Keanu Benton. YA Black for the most part was you know did you ever get a sense? Well, all right, YA Black's on a heater here in his playing time.
No, but he's a fourth, fifth round
Right.
rookie. I mean, I think expectations should be tempered. He got some good quality snaps. There's something to build on there. I think you got to look at your inside linebacker play and say, are you getting enough with your run defense there? Do you have the hammers? Do you have the big physical people downhill? Patrick Queen isn't that guy. Peyton Wilson isn't that guy. They don't play Wilson on rundowns. They put Malik Harrison in, who has his own limitations. They're throwing play pass off of him over his head, stuff like that. So I think it's a conversation about inside linebacker and what the future looks like there. I mean, I think does Queen come back? As of right now, I'd probably still say yes, but is there something else that has to be done at that inside linebacker position to become better and stronger and stouter against the run?
All right, let's look at the starting 11 on defense, and you tell me who's going to be on the week 1 first snap of 2026. I'll read off the names: Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton, Derek Harmon, TJ Watt, Patrick Queen, Malik Harrison, Alex Highsmith, James Pierre, Jalen Ramsey, Chuck Clark, and Joey Porter. How many of those will not be on the week 1 starting defense, assuming they come out base like that?
I mean, a lot of them will likely be returning, it feels like. The ones who might not be starting or on this team.
Harrison, maybe.
Harrison, Pierre's a free agent. We'll see what happens there, but he could play the run, and that's not a central issue. Obviously, at safety, you'll get Elliott back. I'm really looking at that other inside linebacker spot to wonder how Pittsburgh evaluates that this offseason. That's kind of where my focus has come into view.
And then how much better are you expecting this group to be with the okay, let's just swap out Elliott for Clark. And then whoever at inside linebacker along with Queen. I mean, and then you're going to get another corner. You would think, obviously, other than Pierre. I mean, that's what, 3 pieces right there.
Yeah, and then I guess you would look at the maturation of young guys like Harmon and Black. Benton can be talked about too. It was, I think, his best season of the 3. That run defense obviously is not your classic old school 2-gapper. I think Pittsburgh will look for a stout backup nose tackle. They lost to Quale. They were looking for more help there around the deadline. They couldn't find it. They put Black there, and that really wasn't the spot that was ideal for him. So I think we'll see that, but obviously that's not going to be a game-changing type of move.
And can you get another good season out of Cam Hayward?
Well, he keeps defying Father Time, so I think you would, but obviously you can't bank on that forever, and his snap count can only be so high, and he does have to officially declare to come back next year, which I think he will, but we'll have the conversation. What if Mike Tomlin's not coaching this team next year?
Right.
That obviously could impact the decisions of obviously Aaron Rodgers, and I think it would also at least be part of the consideration for Cam Hayward, given that's been the only head coach he's ever played for, his affinity and love for Mike Tomlin, which he expressed post-game. So that obviously could shake up a lot of things. Obviously, a new head coach in general shakes up a lot of things, but also from the player's standpoint of, do I want to come back?
All right, Terrell Austin's gone, right?
I would expect that to happen, yes. I still like Terrell Austin more than 99% of Steeler fans. It's a low bar to clear because most fans hate him and want him run out of town, but in a year like this where your defense went from Tomlin teasing historic natures in August to being a really disappointing, underwhelming unit in a lot of ways, you would expect a DC change. Now, how much will that actually change things? Will it be another internal promotion? That's all Tomlin's ever done. At DC, he's only had 3 DCs in his tenure. Dick LeBeau, who he inherited and kept. Keith Butler promotion. Terrell Austin promotion. Will they go outside? They may. But how much will it help if Tomlin's still the guy orchestrating this defense?
All right, then obviously we're in that Mike Tomlin conversation now. 5th consecutive playoff loss of double-digit numbers. Obviously still has not won a playoff game since 2016. My catchphrase coming out of after the game last night that I thought was kind of cute, and this is the first time I'm saying it, is there's nowhere to go but nowhere.
So what are your feelings on Tomlin? Do you have any strong feelings one way or another? Is it still too fresh and raw? Where are you at?
Well, as we had kind of the conversation a few weeks ago now at this point, what gives you any hope that in the next few years Mike Tomlin can not only get this team into the playoffs and finally win a playoff game, but get this team actually to the Super Bowl? And there's nothing that leads me to believe Mike Tomlin can do that. And obviously at this point you wonder, can he ever even get this team in the next couple of years based on what they have personnel wise right now, coaching staff, yada yada. Can he even get them to a playoff win at this point? And you don't hang banners once again for just playoff wins. He is a good enough coach to take nearly any group of let's say 70 players throughout a season and get them to a non-losing season, 10-7, but no, he squeezes all the juice out of the lemon at that point. And this has becoming, I have no faith that Tomlin can get this team beyond just a non-losing season and a first round playoff loss. So that's where I'm at. And look, you got questions, especially on the offensive side of football. I mean, you don't have a franchise quarterback still at this point. One just isn't going to magically drop from the heavens either. you've got one wide receiver, and at DK Metcalf's age and price right now, you're kind of wondering what that kind of looks like right now.
What does that mean on Metcalf when you say his age and his price? What do you mean?
I mean, even if you look, yeah, you for the season here, Aaron Rodgers posted like a 6.28 adjusted net yards per passing attempt number. That's not going up with Aaron Rodgers in 2026 if he comes back. And even if you were to have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I don't think on the other
I
side.
mean, it went up from his Jets tenure last year to this year. Why can't it go up a little bit or at least hold again?
I think you just squeezed all the juice out of it, especially at his age now. The lack of mobility. You go back to all the things Mike Tomlin said coming out of last year and talk about quarterback mobility. So what does he do? Goes out, gets the oldest quarterback with zero mobility at this point.
Was it? I didn't mean to cut you off, but was it the wrong move to get Rodgers? I think even in hindsight, it probably was the right move in the sense of that was the best quarterback Pittsburgh could have added.
Right. It was the best with what you had the ability to get. And they squeezed all the juice they could out of it. But that's as good. I'm looking back at it, I'm surprised he almost hit 6.3 as a number at this point. And that was primarily because of his play in the red zone and the touchdowns he was able to have versus the low interception rate. Because he went how many games without an interception there?
Yeah, his last 7 or so regular season contests the Chargers game was his last regular season interception, and then obviously didn't throw one until the pick six.
All right, so I don't see that number going up. No.
Fair.
Back to the main talking point with Mike Tomlin here. Art has some soul searching to do.
I don't want to put words in your mouth whenever you sit there and say, basically, Tomlin's taken this team as far as he can take them. I interpret that as you calling for a change. Is that what you're saying? Or
there's never been a better time. There's never been a better time for a change right now throughout this whole entire organization right now.
So are you calling for this team to move on from Mike Tomlin?
Yeah, I think they should. I really think they should. I really think they should strongly consider it because, all right, let's say you, do you think they're going to get one of the top 2 quarterbacks in this draft?
No.
All right, me either. And beyond those top 2, it gets real murky. We can have the whole Ty Simpson talk and all like that. But do you see Mike Tomlin leaning into any rookie quarterback not named the top 2?
I mean, probably not because of the class. I don't think in principle he would be against it. They obviously went with Pickett in 23 and started him, 4 games into that season or even earlier, well, 4 games. But just based on the projection of the class, probably not, no.
All right. Do you think if Aaron Rodgers returns and runs it back and they beef up the wide receivers and all like that, that he can at least get this team one game further and finally win a playoff game?
It's an unpopular take, but yes, I think that's plausible. I'm not saying it would happen, but yes, I think Rodgers can still be a benefit for an NFL offense and have success.
Yeah, I'm not there, especially after with the freshness of this game.
He played well this season. I thought Rodgers had a good year. I think it beat a lot of expectations where people thought he was going to be a disaster and it was going to be drama-full mess and this offense would be horrendous. It was your best quarterback play of the post-Ben era, which granted is not a terribly high bar, but even objectively putting post-Ben era and comparisons aside, it was a successful year for an offense that didn't always have the firepower and a young offensive line that had to grow over the course of the season, and Rodgers playing through the wrist fracture. I thought there was a lot of good in his play. Now, I'm not saying you have to bring him back, but I'm just saying of taking the season for what it was a positive year for Aaron Rodgers and, in some ways, his Pittsburgh passing game.
All right, what was this team's record against teams that ended up with a winning record? They lost to the Seahawks. They beat the Patriots thanks to how many? Half a dozen takeaways, something like that. Who else had a winning record? The Packers. They lost to the Packers.
Well, I think the
Oh,
Colts get funny because the Colts they beat a quality Colts team at the time, and then the Colts obviously
okay.
collapsed and they had injury there. So I think some of those stats can get a little bit wonky because they don't always represent a team in the moment.
They lost to the Bears. They lost to the Bills.
Yeah, they swept the Ravens. Obviously, again, not a winning record technically, but Pittsburgh sweeping them really was the reason why Ravens did not have a winning record. They beat a Detroit team that was an upset victory, and they had I call that a quality win. I look at more quality wins than I do what was your record necessarily, because again, it doesn't always encapsulate the win at the time.
So you're saying you would not move on from? You don't think that? I planted my flag that I think that now's never been a better time to move on from Tomlin.
Yeah, and I understand. I get that perspective. I'm still not 100% in where I fall. I didn't wake up with the reaction of go fire this guy. I don't have that reaction currently as you do, and I know that's a very unpopular take that people are going to be extremely upset about. The easiest thing for me to do is to join the chorus of say fire Tomlin. It's time to move on. To be very profitable. It'd be great for business and great for my Twitter mentions. I'm still thinking about it. I hope to write about it for the morning. My overall thoughts on what I would do will separate the I would do versus what the team will do and what Tomlin's decision may ultimately become. I kind of look at my first criteria for a coach is did you lose the locker room? If you lose the locker room, you're just done. I don't really care anything else. Nothing else really matters at that point. You've lost the group. You're not getting that back. I think he kept the locker room together. I think they certainly is a group that's fighting for him, that supports him. Not saying you have to keep him on that basis alone, but that's kind of one of the criteria. The other criteria is do I feel like a coach with a good roster can go win? I still think Tomlin is capable of it. Obviously, the results are the results, and they are not good enough, and Tomlin has to wear that. It's been an abysmal lack of success by what the Steelers' standard should be in terms of winning playoff games. So, I also look at this head coaching pool. I don't love the pool and other candidates out there. I know if somebody gets hired and they don't have immediate success, we'll call for their firing too. I get that kind of cycle of it all. So, I'm still sitting here kind of mixed. I don't have that feeling of this is the time to move on. I still kind of have that feeling of what I've said throughout the season, that next year is the year that makes more sense to have that break as opposed to this year for the reasons I've outlined before. I still kind of have that feeling more so than making the change this year, but I hope and plan to write about that more definitively for the morning on the site.
Do you view John Harbaugh as someone that lost that locker room over there?
Well, I don't follow the Ravens the way that I follow the Steelers, but the reporting seems to indicate, and the reporting is mixed, but it certainly seems like Harbaugh had less. He lost the locker room more than Tomlin has lost it in Pittsburgh.
Okay. And yeah, we don't obviously follow them day to day and all like that, but there were some curious kind of not the overall support like you would hear from these guys, especially the guys last night and all after the game here. Look,
You don't
I
think that
just
showed? Wait. You don't think that showed support for Tomlin post game?
no. Like you did with the guys showing support. In other words, I didn't hear it coming out of the Ravens locker room like we heard it,
Ah, yeah.
coming out of the
Okay.
stadium, and we knew we would hear what we
Mhm.
heard from Aaron. I mean, Aaron Rodgers with his comparison to Matt LaFleur and doesn't understand why either one of those guys are on the hot seats. Blah blah blah. And obviously Cam Hayward's in full, yeah, and Calvin Austin, all of them. Yeah, I mean, we got exactly what we thought we were going to get out of the players from the
Mhm.
Steelers last night after the loss, at least the ones that I've heard from.
Well, let's talk about what Tomlin actually said. He was asked about his future at the end of the presser. And the last time he was asked about that, he literally walked off the podium after that Bills playoff loss. He did not do that after being asked last night. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but just said basically, I'm not in that mindset right now. I'm not thinking that big picture stuff. It was a more cagey, vague answer than I expected from Tomlin. And could that suggest that Tomlin is truly thinking about evaluating his future and potentially not returning as the Steelers head coach? I thought the answer was a little eyebrow raising.
Yeah, it was it was left. He left it open for some interpretation to come in there for sure.
Hmm. Now I know that again, you get asked about that 20 minutes after a loss, and it's hard to put your thoughts together. And the reporting is that Tomlin kind of takes each year and evaluates things and talks with family. And so obviously none of those things have taken place yet and will over the coming days, but it caught my attention. Tomlin's answer there was not definitively, I want to be here. I want to coach. I'm a coach. He's kind of said that before. The walk-off kind of indicated his feelings before. So, obviously it'll take some time. He'll get asked about it again and probably give some fuller answer during his year-end press conference in the coming days. But that caught my attention.
Alex, what gives you the most hope when looking forward? And it's still fresh. It's still, a lot to look at here. But what gives you the most hope, optimism, looking forward into 2026 right now? It sounds like you're hanging a lot of it on Aaron Rodgers potentially coming back for starters.
Well, it's not even that. I don't know if he is or not. Really, the reporting is indicating he's not going to come back. Now, Rodgers was asked about his future as well and said he's not going to make an emotional decision. He's going to take some time. But the way that ESPN carried the end of that broadcast certainly made it out like it was Rodgers' last game. Maybe that's just playing it safe and to be able to celebrate that if it is his last game, to not miss that moment. But you heard Troy Aikman kind of report it was Rodgers' last game. Lisa Salters, a sideline reporter, had a really interesting comment that she talked to Rodgers in that Week 15 game when the Monday Night Crew came for the Miami game, where Rodgers said he was probably going to be his last season, which is not that long ago. So is that still his feeling? It would seem to be the confidence. I'm not even saying that I have extreme confidence, but in terms of what is there to look forward to, you look at this young offensive line and how it grew, and that's really encouraging. It was such a big X factor for the season. If this group could grow and develop, or if they would struggle and the offensive line would need retooled again, I think they took big steps in the right direction. A dozen draft picks next year help as well. So those are kind of two things that you hang your hat on as you go into 2026.
All right, let's assume Aaron Rodgers decides to retire.
Mm-hmm.
Where is your optimism about 2026?
Well, the first thought would just be who's your quarterback, and
Right.
obviously it becomes a lot murkier there. You're going to be exploring the draft. You're going to be exploring the veteran market. I'm not sitting here saying that they're going to go win a playoff game in 2026. I don't really have any strong immediate feelings on what 26 looks like. There's a lot of questions that have to be answered. Who's the head coach? Who's the quarterback? Who's the OC? All those pretty foundational questions have to kind of get sorted out first before we talk about what is your confidence for next year.
All right. I mean, I just looking forward, and I'll say this: I don't think Aaron Rodgers should be the quarterback of this team. Period. So that's where I'm at there. And like I said, I don't know how much more I could say. Different ways I could say it. This is the perfect opportunity for this team to break from Mike Tomlin at this point.
Do you have any immediate feelings of who should be the quarterback and head coach of the team next year?
No, not
But you
even
had mentioned
yet.
Malik Willis. You had tweeted out his name.
Well,
to
look,
get that
you
ranking
gotta
element.
be careful there. And we
Sure.
had those conversations there. Yeah, I mean, if Aaron Rodgers is not going to be your quarterback, and you don't get one of the top two quarterbacks to lean into in the draft, then obviously you got to fill the position somehow. Is Mason Rudolph that guy? No. Could you go down the Will Howard road? I suppose. I don't know. I mean, we haven't even seen him take a snap in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform yet. There. If you go down the Malik Willis road, you better be careful there because there's just such a small sample size that you better have a damn good plan. You better know exactly what he did well coming out of Green Bay in a couple of years in the limited amount of starts there. It's a real dangerous, slippery slope as far as money and guaranteed money goes, to kind of lean into a guy with such a small sample size and the tale of two cities that he's been in so far.
Yeah, we talked about that, and obviously Willis will get discussed a lot, but there'll be a lot of competition for him as kind of a young up-and-comer in a off-season where there aren't a lot of other names to consider, a lot of kind of veteran, guys that are falling out of favor. Tua, Kyler Murray, a draft class that looks pretty darn weak, and so Willis, I think, will be the apple of many teams in terms of pursuing for a quarterback there. So we'll see. The head coaching search if Pittsburgh does move on, if Tomlin does move on, they are behind. They're a week behind as other teams are getting all their ducks in a row and interviews. And, we'll see exactly when hires start, probably within maybe later this week. You might get your first hire or two for a head coach somewhere as more teams become eliminated and there's fewer kind of hurdles to jump through to get some of these guys hired. So, Pittsburgh does enter the head coaching fray. Obviously, it'll be a very attractive job, but they will have a lot of ground to make up on these 8 teams that already have gotten a pretty big jump on their searches.
All right.
All right, Dave, special teams, just to go back to the game, it kind of feels like we're far removed from that. Waitman, I thought, punted well. Everything else, the coverage units did a nice job. Skarnik had a couple good tackles. Boz made his kicks. Nothing too big there, but I thought Waitman had a nice night.
Yeah, I haven't even got to that point to deciphering it because it was so insignificant overall, it felt like.
That's fair. All right, Dave. Any other final thoughts? We should mention, speaking of coaching situations, Arthur Smith scheduled to interview with the Tennessee Titans for their head coaching vacancy tomorrow. That was the earliest he could interview by NFL rule. It's the only team that has expressed interest in Arthur Smith as an OC so far. Not a big surprise given his deep ties to the organization, to ownership, a former coach, former coordinator, had success there in 2019 and 2020. So he's one of about a dozen candidates for that Tennessee job. You wouldn't think Arthur Smith is the favorite. Last night's performance will do him no favors in the eyes of the decision makers and the fan base, obviously, but he is going to get a look.
If I'm the Titans, I'm like, yeah, we're good right now. So we'll obviously see what happens here. We got a lot to chew on going forward, obviously into the offseason. I think our Ross McCorkle's got free agent, the list of free agents that he's writing around going up today. We'll start getting closer into the financials and the cap situation of this team. A lot of the unrestricted free agents that this team has obviously won't be back. Those that will be back, I mean, you obviously going to have to try to go after Gainwell, I think is one of them. Aaron Rodgers is obviously on that list. Calvin Austin is on that list, but outside of a handful of the top, and it seems to be the case every year with this Steelers team, right? You got some, it's real top heavy of guys that you potentially want to get back, and the rest, if they want to come back on minimum deals, okay, we'll maybe explore a handful there, but it's not an overly appetizing list when it comes to the unrestricted free agents outside of the handful that I mentioned here. In fact, let's roll down the list real quick before we get to some reader emails here.
Yeah, I think Ross just put that post up if you guys want to check it out, of the Steelers pending free agents.
Let's look at the unrestricted real quick here and roll through them here. Aaron Rodgers, obviously, that's going to be a big question mark. Will he retire? Does he want to come back to the Steelers? Do the Steelers want him back, and at what price? Adam Thielen, sounds like he's done. He's going to retire. Andres Pete, doesn't matter. Asante Samuel Jr., heck, we hardly got to know him, right?
There were some ups and downs.
Yeah.
He could come back.
Calvin Austin III.
I like Calvin a lot, but I'm moving on.
Yeah, me too. Chuck Clark.
Moving on.
Yep. Cole Holcomb.
Moving on.
Connor Hayward.
You can come back on a cheap deal.
Yeah, it better be a minimum. Daniel Quale.
Well, the ACL's an issue. He's in his 30s. You probably move on.
Dean Lowry.
You move on.
Donald Parham.
I mean, it's kind of irrelevant, but you move on.
Isaac Seumalo.
That's a really interesting one. It's going to be more interesting conversations, given his age. His good play this year. I know Rodgers made a reference to say Molly want to play another season, so there's still a conversation with him. It's really tough, Dave. I'm leaning towards move on because I don't want to have to pay a guy more 3 years later than I paid him before for a guy in his 30s with a bunch of soft tissue injuries. I thought it was a good year for Seumalo. Really appreciate his play, steadiness, a veteran guy that line, but this group is getting more experience. You don't have to have that veteran. Anderson can compete. You get a maybe mid-round, second, third round, fourth round draft pick in there. So all that to say, I'd probably move on.
I move on as well too. Isaiah Loudermilk.
Yeah, you can move on.
Jabril Peppers.
You can move on.
Jack Driscoll.
You can move on.
James Pierre, if he wants to come up back on to compete for a gunner backup cornerback spot for maybe slightly more than a minimum, I'm okay with that, but nothing more.
I mean, I thought he played some really good reps this year. This was his best season, so I think you're shorting him a little bit for the whole gunner aspect. I mean, you got to look at the price. I think it's kind of on the Kelly Witherspoon situation in terms of his market, but I think there's certainly some reason to bring him back to at least compete for a starting role.
Yeah, but slightly more than the minimum. That's why I can't. I'm not breaking the bank for him. Kenneth Gainwell. Obviously, we're both agreed you got to do everything in your power to get him back.
Sure, it's not going to be cheap. There'll be a lot of competition for him. We'll see who the OC is, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you certainly will make a play to bring him back.
Kyle Duggar,
You move on.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
You move on.
Yep. Max Sharping,
You move on.
Miles Killebrew.
You might let that one hang until the summer, kind of see his rehab where he's at. Maybe he'd come back on a minimum contract in camp just to compete and see where that knee is. But, we're getting close to the end there.
Scotty Miller.
You could do the 1-year minimum thing with him if you really wanted to, but it doesn't really matter.
And Skylar Thompson.
You can move on.
Yep. So, I mean, how many names are really more than minimum conversations? Aaron Rodgers, Adam Thielen, is Asante Samuel Jr. more than a minimum player?
It's tough because played a couple games this year off the injury. It could be a little more than a minimum, but it's not substantial.
Isaac Seumalo, you can have discussions about. James Pierre, you can have discussion about. Kenneth Gainwell, you have discussion about. Miles Killebrew, you can have discussion about. My eyes, that's it.
And Killebrew will be minimum. I mean, then that's going to be a kind of see where the rehab and recovery and all that is at. So really, in terms of the substantial contracts, it's Rodgers, Seumalo, Gainwell, Pierre. I don't know exactly what you want to call substantial, but I think it'd be more than minimum and fairly easily clearing that. So I'd put Pierre in that camp as well.
All right, let's see what the listeners have to say here in the email machine. This from Nicholas Arnold. Terrible offensive game plan for this one, and it's not all on the coaching staff. He says, I do have a question looking forward, though. Why would a solid, age-appropriate wide receiver want to come to Pittsburgh with Arthur Smith as an OC and Rodgers as a quarterback, assuming he comes back another year? Smith famously doesn't reliably focus on receivers past his number one, not to mention his obsession with Jonnu Smith, who's been so underwhelming. Rodgers takes so long to build rapport with the receiver and then freezes them out when they make mistakes. Let me know your thoughts. You make some good points there, right? Why would any top end wide receiver want to come to Pittsburgh with Arthur Smith as an OC and a even older Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback, assuming he wants to come back?
Yeah, I made this point too about the difficulty of finding that receiver because a rookie might not work well with Rodgers, and a veteran may sit there and say, I'm not going to have a role in this offense. So I think it's a valid point. If Arthur Smith does not get the Titans head coaching job, which we'll both agree is unlikely to happen, does he come back as OC next year, regardless of who's a quarterback?
Good question. Let's see. Let's move on to Chris Lookart. I'm sorry if this is unbelievable redundant. I've seen this movie so many times. Beyond predictable. If I were Pat Freiermuth, I would be requesting a trade today. Tomlin needs to be gone, and it might actually be time to let TJ go somewhere else. Both Smith, the coach, and players should be gone. We have a good young core on defense to build around, but guys like Ramsey should not be welcome back. I love my Steelers and will always support them, but this is predictable and hard to watch. Look here's I'm sure the talking head talk shows and all, it'll be brought up about TJ Watt. I mean, but let's say you did entertain the idea of trading TJ Watt at this point, at his age, at his salary right now. What could you conceivably get for him? Could you get a first round pick for him? Could you get?
No, I don't think so. No, his value is not in a great place right now, given his age, his salary, a career low season. This would be kind of buying high on his contract and selling low on the player. So, I mean, it's a disappointing year. It's not the year that you were hoping for, obviously, but you're not going to get great value, I don't think.
Right. I mean, you're almost you got to eat it and roll on. Hope he stays healthy, and Hopefully, his days of 20 sack seasons over with.
20, yeah. I mean, they're tough to do in even anyone's prime, but yeah, the question is, can you get to
15.
15 is kind of what you're shooting for. Can you get back to that? I think he's capable of it, but what are the odds?
What team in a right mind would give up a first-round draft pick for him right now?
It'd be a contending type of team that feels like they want that one pass rusher away, a San Francisco of sorts, for example. But even still, I think a first rounder, you're not going to get that for him. You're going to get probably a day 2 pick if you were to try to trade him.
All right. And even if you did all of this, you'd have to do that before the draft, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, let's move on to Ryan Roberts. Gloom, despair, and agony on me. I don't know if I feel more depressed or duped for actually thinking the Steelers would win. This team had no business. Look, me and Alex were pretty definitive. I, in my heart of hearts, I thought they would do enough to win this game. I thought they would win, and I really thought they would win when they were down. What was it? 10 to 6. I still had this hope of hopes thinking they were going to win. He says this team had no business being in the playoffs again this year and keeping our streak of being down 21 points in 7 straight postseason matchups is a nice reminder. And I would hate to think what the outcome could have been if Stroud played even average and Nico Collins didn't leave the game. He's got a good point there. What do we have to look forward to? The 2 best players and leaders, Rodgers and Cam, should/will retire. The big money players, Watt, Metcalf, seem to only impact the salary cap, and the O-line that they spent so much draft capital on is a mess. I'll disagree that the line is a mess. I'm with Alex. I think you saw this unit grow. I mean, Aaron Rodgers had a lot of positives to say about Zach Frazier and really the right side of that offensive line last night. So I think I think there's a nucleus. I thought Dylan Cook outside of last night has given you something to work with. We'll see what happens with Broderick Jones. I think if there's any optimism to be had about this offense moving into 2026, and Alex laid this out a little bit earlier there, it is the fact that you've got a young nucleus of this offensive line to at least work with, hopefully with a new offensive line coach, and we'll see about the OC here. He says, if you were a GM and you could take any of the Steeler players or coaches, can you name any? And I realize Alex would choose Danny Smith. If you could take any, look, I think I'd be with Alex right now. Give me Danny Smith, and I'll take my chances. What else happens anywhere else?
I like Alfredo Roberts, tight ends coach. We'll see what coaches come back. You would expect, just kind of putting aside the question of which coaches you would take point taken on kind of the limited list there. If Tomlin does come back, you would expect probably a lot of coaching changes. Didn't make a lot of coaching changes last year. It was really 2 or 3. You had big personnel changes. These things are typically cyclical, where one year it's players, next year it's coaches cleaning house. And so what is the fate of Pat Meyer, Terrell Austin? Who else could be up? Tom Mark's contract is up. We'll see if he comes back and kind of go from there.
All right, this one from Peter Fox. He says, I'm not sure when I'll actually listen to the pod for your answer out of frustration with everything football right now, but I want to share my mental journey with y'all. First quarter, 1:17 left, 2nd and 10 at our own 44, 3-0 Steelers, 64 yards of offense to this point. Driving, looking for points. DK runs the best route he's possibly run all year. Aaron throws a dot. DK drops it. Offense goes in the toilet for the rest of the game with only 111 yards after that moment. He says, my question goes hand in hand with Alex's idea of a negativity stat he mentioned yesterday. Why are the Steelers incapable of overcoming offensive negativity over the last few years, and when did it happen? I felt like through the mid to late 2010s that as long as the defense didn't give up the cheeks too early, the offense would get its head out of its you-know-what and get rolling. Is it the quarterback play? Is it the offensive line play? Is it a lack of dynamic route running pass catcher? I feel the backs are good, but is it them? Maybe the tight ends, question mark. Is it play? So he gets into a long what is it with the whole negativity offense overcoming the inactivity? He ends this with saying pitchers and catchers report in 28 days. I'll hang up and listen.
All right. Appreciate you kind of venting out your thoughts, and certainly the Metcalf catch in some ways felt like a turning point in this one. Yeah, it's frustrating. This team just seems to run in place. Like Dave said, 9-8, 10-7, wild card round, get bounced, one and done, and you wonder how this team can ever get anywhere else. I mean, obviously, you'd rather go in a positive direction, but even just feels like they are hardwired and coded to be this type of purgatory team. And that is a frustrating place to be because it has no movement for a reset. It has no movement, obviously, for a Super Bowl run.
Yeah. Brian Tellini, let's try to get through this together. He says, if we simplify this as much as possible, we need to understand what the team's goal was this year. It was to finally get over the hump in January and then see what happens. We failed. As an organization, they need to realize that they both failed, and they did. They need a new direction. They need to start thinking long-term again, investing in the quarterback of the future, whether he's on the roster currently or not, investing in your recent third-round picks and developing them on the field instead of the doghouse, building an offense that is both efficient and splashy, bringing in youth and speed in the secondary. I don't know the answers, he says. I just know this will require some tough decisions. It might require us being less competitive for a year or two. It might require saying goodbye to coaches and players who have been major pieces of the franchise. It won't be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is. The results have remained the same for a decade. The foundation of those results cannot. So Brian venting there. Ryan Schlick writes in, scale 1 to 10. How disappointing is it that this team gets dominated in the trenches again in the playoffs, despite all the investment and focus on improving them over the last couple of years? So on a scale of 1 to 10, and then another scale of 1 to 10, how likely is it that this team drafts a safety within the first 3 rounds of the draft?
It's very disappointing. I don't know exactly the number, but it's up there. It's 8+ because you did, like we said earlier, like the reader said, you invested all this in the run defense, and you were pretty healthy in a lot of ways. I know Elliott was out in this one, but you had your defensive line intact for this game. Excuse me, and still struggled. So yeah, it's frustrating when your theory of the case was offensively, let's get some playmakers to get some more big plays in the pass game. You didn't really do that overall, and your draft focus was on improving the run defense, and in many ways you didn't do that. So it felt like your offseason missions were not achieved despite your efforts to try and achieve them.
I mean, you gave up 164 yards rushing to this team, right?
Yeah, it's unacceptable.
And that's got to put the disappointment, at least on the trenches on the defensive side of football, as a scale of 1 to 10 or 10. How likely is it this team drafts a safety on a scale of 1 to 10 in the first 3 rounds of the draft?
Well, I think Ramsey still comes back, assuming no big coaching staff change, and Elliott's back as well. So you have starters, but your depth is really thin, and you're getting pretty old at safety. Ramsey in his 30s, and Elliott is, how old is Elliott going to be next year? He's going to be right around 30, I believe. And so you're starting to really kind of get pretty elderly there. He's going to be 29 come April. So yeah, I mean, you're probably not drafting in the first round, but you're going to likely fortify that with some depth, probably in that mid-round, 3rd, 4th round.
All right, so you say on a scale of 1 to 10, about an 8 as far as probability goes?
Yeah, it's so
7,
far away,
8.
but 7, 8 sounds about right.
All right, SOS from Greg here. Same old Steelers, same old. I enjoy your in-depth analysis, but you fell into the fan trap again. 25 Steelers were a mediocre team, beating only mediocre or poor teams. Your adjusted net yards passing stat told you all you needed to know, but somehow you convinced yourself that this team was better than the facts. Even the Carolina Panthers made a respectable game out of their playoff matchup. Tomlin is stuck in the same rut as Chuck Noll was at the end of Chuck's career. The team was too good to get top draft picks, so they never could exceed expectations. Tomlin is further hampered by his inability to judge good football talent. I believe the only way this changes is for him to move on. I sincerely hope you guys have a new coach and new staff to talk about as we enter the 2026 season. Otherwise, it's Steeler insanity to roll everything back out there again. Expect different results. Happy New Year to you, Greg. Yeah, look, this team, if you look at just merely adjusted net yards per passing attempt, they were a barely in the playoffs team, and we really should not have expected any more, and should have been thankful that Luke missed the field goal attempt late in the game, or else they wouldn't even have been there. So he does did we fall into the trap of thinking, well, maybe?
Well, in fairness to you, Dave, you talked about how, to use your term, mid this team was. You called Week 18 with the mid bowl between Baltimore and Pittsburgh. So I don't think you had delusions about where Pittsburgh was at. And I mean, we both picked the Texans to lose this game, for Pittsburgh to win this game. So, I guess you could say that we didn't see it correctly there, but we were certainly not alone in picking Pittsburgh to win. We both certainly knew that Houston was a capable team that could easily win this game. So I mean, your preseason prediction was what, 10-7? Mine was 10-7. I did predict the playoff win. I forget what you predicted.
I think I did too. Yeah.
But I think we had a pretty good pulse of about where this team would be. Obviously, didn't they lose this playoff game? But I think our overall thoughts were generally in line with what this team actually was.
Let's look real quick at while we're talking about adjusted net yards per passing attempt differential, and let's look at the teams left in the playoffs at this point. The Rams was the regular season winner with a 2.9 adjusted net yards differential. They led the league. They're still in the playoffs. The Seattle Seahawks next at 2.7. They're still in the playoffs. The Patriots 2.0. They're still in the playoffs. The Bills 1.9. They're still in the playoffs. The Packers next 1.7. They're not in the playoffs anymore. The Texans 1.7. They're still in the playoffs. The Eagles 1.7. The 49ers, long story short, no team with the 49ers are the only team that had a negative differential, and they were just negative by 0.1 in adjusted net yards per passing attempt differential, are still in the playoffs. I guess what I'm getting at, does this stat still pass the sniff test? And the answer is yes.
Yes, I think it's pretty clear. In Pittsburgh, what did they finish at, either regular season or with the playoff
regular
game included?
Season 0.1 to the good. Their offense was 6.1. Their defense was 6.0. So they were every bit of a mid team. And they beat a mid team in the AFC North Championship game in the Ravens, who had a negative 0.3 differential. So that was definition indeed of the mid bowl. We should not be surprised that no teams from the AFC North are left in the playoffs at this point.
Well said.
Let's see. Thanks for that email. Embarrassing from the 188. Hey guys, it's Bryce. The loss was embarrassment on all fronts. My thoughts, the Jonnu Smith thing makes sense. Smith loves him in a dink and dunk run after the catch offense because in his mind he thinks he's better at run after the catch than Pat. And this staff has no idea how to scheme up a tight end like Freiermuth, who is traditionally receiving tight end. There, I solved it for you. Arthur has been competent but needs to go. They need a schematic reset. Number 2, the problem with the Steelers' run game is that the scheme is based on effectively running outside zone, and they can't consistently run outside. That's another reason why I would move on from Smith. That's supposed to be his bread and butter, and they simply don't do it well. They never really leaned into a lot of outside zone, did they?
Yeah, I don't know what some of the stats show on that about Pittsburgh's attempts and success. The run game was building throughout the season. The rush attempts were lower than typical for Arthur Smith, in large part because of the lack of quarterback mobility. It's very much that Matt Ryan year they spent together in Atlanta, Smith's first year on the job. I thought the run game still had some success overall. I wasn't displeased with the growth of it throughout the season, whether you're talking about inside zone, outside zone, etc.
All right, one last one from Jordan Pearsall, then we're going to get out of here at about 2 hours. Or no, what time did we start?
We're coming up. We're coming up on 2 hours.
All right, Jordan Pearsall, and I think this is all a mini email machine anyway. What's up, fellas? I have 3 statements for you. All you have to say is I agree or I disagree. Mike Tomlin's biggest gift is also his biggest curse. He overachieves with a franchise quarterback, and because he overachieves, even in a division with 2 top 5 quarterbacks, we're never in a position to get our franchise quarterback with superhero traits. Do you agree or disagree with that?
The premise was he overachieves with a franchise quarterback?
He overachieves without a franchise
Without.
quarterback. And because he overachieves, even in a division with 2 top 5 quarterbacks, we're never in position to get our franchise quarterback with superhero traits. So in other words, he overachieves without a franchise quarterback, and because he overachieves, even in the team is never in a position to get a quarterback with superhero traits.
Well, I don't mean to hedge. I agree on the overall premise that Tomlin has this team in kind of this, always stuck in the middle. Are they in? Are they out? Are they contenders or not? But I still believe that you can still get a franchise quarterback without having to pick top 3 overall. I know it could be a little bit harder to do so, but I've outlined that, last year a lot about, look at Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Those were not top 3 overall picks. So I don't like to throw your hands up and say, oh, you just can't get a quarterback because you went 9-8. But I get the point that Tomlin seems to do more with less and less with more.
How strongly would you try to consider, and what would you give up to draft one of the top 2 quarterbacks in Mendoza or Moore?
Well, we'll see if Dante Moore even declares. I don't think that's been set in stone, but I don't see how you're even going to get those guys. The top picks are held by the Raiders, and who's picking second? It's a quarterback needy team, right? I don't know, the Cardinals or something. Like, how if those are the quarterbacks that are there,
you'd have to give up more than a farm to even get there.
Yeah, I don't know how you're going to push a team off of that. And if a team is willing to come off of that for your deal, then you kind of wonder, okay, are they not sold on this quarterback? Is there a flaw in this quarterback? So I just, I'm kind of being hypocritical when I say you can't get the quarterback this year. I mean, you can still get a quarterback potentially with Ty Simpson or somebody like that. But in terms of getting one of those top 2 picks, I just don't see the feasibility of that happening.
Number 2, DK is, agree or disagree, DK is explosive and a great piece to an offense, but his hands are not consistent enough to be a true number 1.
Well, I don't know exactly how you define number 1 versus true number 1. I mean, his hands are not good enough. It's one of the weaker parts of his game. So, I mean, from that standpoint, I agree his hands are suspect.
Yeah, his hands are suspect. I agree. Tomlin, hands not consistent enough to be a true number. I think you just, I think the statement should be agree or disagree. He's an explosive piece, but his hands are not consistent enough. And leave the tag of to be a true number 1 out of it, then I would agree with that. The last one, Tomlin allowing Arthur Smith to phase Pat Freiermuth out of this offense for Jonnu Smith is malpractice.
I agree.
All right, that's what Jordan has there. All right, we've been all over the place in this one. I've probably not made a lot of sense. I'm really frustrated, especially when a lot of our job is to kind of look forward and maybe try to provide. It sounds like Alex has a little bit more optimism than I do. Maybe my tune will change here over the next couple of weeks and all like that. Just it just feels like, and I put this out last night, SOS, same old Steelers, and it feels like they're running in place and have been running in place. And I'm not saying anything else that a lot of listeners haven't thought 3 years ago, at this point. But it is very, very frustrating seeing what happened in this playoff game and then looking forward into 2026, the immediate future, trying to come up with any optimism that's even going to get you past the point that you were in this year. And the thing too is that we brought up several times over the last couple of weeks here is you were in a situation where there's no Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. There's no Lamar Jackson. You look at all the teams in the AFC and thinking, yeah, you could make a good argument for any of the 7 teams in the AFC to represent that side in the Super Bowl. And then the Steelers lay the biggest egg out of all the wild card teams this week. That it's just against a team that we both thought and predicted had a chance of beating the Texans, good defense and all.
I guess my last thought is, and again, I'm still trying to digest my thoughts and feelings about Mike Tomlin, what his future will be, what I think his future should be. But I made this point last year, maybe years before, that he's taken on basically the arc of his mentor, Tony Dungy. I think they're very similar people in men and character in a really positive way. And they're similar coaches, which is a lot of positives, but then also a lot of inability to get over the hump. You had that one good run. Dungy had his one Super Bowl run. Tomlin had his one Super Bowl run that came earlier than Dungy's, but one is one. But then other than that, their playoff resumes were really disappointing otherwise. And it's interesting. Dungy's last year coaching was when he was 53 years old, and Mike Tomlin is 53 years old right now. I wonder if that thought, I'm sure that thought's probably not lost on Mike Tomlin whenever he ponders his future. So I called, Tomlin kind of a modern era Tony Dungy, and I think that certainly sticks and stays true after this game.
Let's end it with this. What's most likely to happen with Mike Tomlin? He gets fired. He gets an extension. He resigns, or nothing.
I don't think he gets fired. As disappointing as the season was at an end, I think in Rooney's eyes, he's not going to fire him. They won the division. I think they won 2 really key regular season games in Rooney's eyes. Obviously, Week 18 against Baltimore at home at Acrisure to win the division is huge. Also, the Week 4 Dublin game. I think Rooney wanted that game in such a bad way for what that meant for him, his family. The first NFL regular season game in Ireland, to win that one was a big feather in Rooney's camp. Don't underestimate the pain of an owner losing internationally. This was a big talking point with Woody Johnson and the Jets. Some of their international, losses. It's an embarrassment abroad, and owners care about those types of things. So all that to say, probably won't get fired. Extension. Now, are you saying is picking up the team option?
Yeah,
extension?
Let me say option. Yeah.
Well, I think if you bring Tomlin back, you basically have to pick up the option. How do you put Tomlin in lame duck status? I know some will say he deserves it, but functionally, from a distraction standpoint, from a free agent standpoint, I just don't see that as tenable. So the question really is, does he just return, or does he resign or get fired, or kind of the 3 camps I think it probably should be. I don't think he gets fired. I still think he comes back because he loves coaching, but that answer last night gave me more pause than I previously had.
All right. Shall we end it there?
What do you think of those 3 in terms of what will happen, not your own personal feelings, but what will the outcome be, which we should know within a couple days. These things move fast. You can't take 2 weeks as a head coach and figure out what's going to happen. You got to move pretty quickly.
I think what's most likely to happen.
I mean, obviously, no one knows, and we'll hear more from Tomlin and presser, and maybe that'll give us some more information.
I think they pick up his option.
So you think the question is, does Tomlin want to return? And you think he will want to return?
Yeah.
And you don't think he'll be fired? Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at. I mean, I think he returns. I mean, I'm getting a little less confident than I probably previously was, but that's where I'm at.
All right. We will crack open the tape here the next couple of days. I guess we got to do that in a hurry because Wednesday we're going to have a show. we'll get deeper into this thing. We'll see when the next press conference is. We get some players are going to talk on Tuesday about right now, I guess, starting here in a little bit, and we'll cover that. We'll have free agent talk. We'll start getting into financials and start getting into our off season and draft prep, which is already underway as well too. So in the meantime, as always, you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. And with all that, we'll be back about 24 hours from now. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.